Your bank account could be emptied tonight, and you'd have no warning, no recourse, no one to call. And the worst part? It's not even illegal. In the last year alone, Americans lost over $2.7 billion to digital banking scams, according to the FBI. Zelle fraud is up 733%, and banks are reimbursing victims less than 9% of the time. People are waking up to accounts closed without reason, savings gone, assets frozen, and no explanation whatsoever. And if you think you're safe, you're not. Even tech-savvy professionals, veterans, doctors, and law enforcement families are getting wiped out. AI-generated voice scams, deepfakes, fake bank calls that clone your number. No one is safe anymore. So listen, stop scrolling. I'm going to show you exactly why this is happening, who's behind it, and what you can do before it's your turn to log in and see $0 staring back at you. This isn't fear, this is happening. 10. Your bank isn't required to give you your money immediately. Let that sink in. Alright, let's kick things off with something that'll send a chill straight down your spine. Your bank is not legally obligated to give you your money right away. You think you've got money in the bank, right? Safe, insured, accessible. But wait until you try to withdraw $10,000 in cash and see what happens. The teller stares at you like you've just asked for the nuclear codes. You'll get hit with, "Why do you need this much cash?" Or, "We don't have that kind of liquidity today." Liquidity? It's my money. But the truth is, banks operate on a fractional reserve system, meaning they only keep about 0% to 10% of your deposits in cash reserves. According to the Federal Reserve's 2020 Reserve Requirement Update, banks aren't even required to hold any reserves anymore. That's right, zero. The rest is loaned out, invested, or moved around. So if there's a rush, like during a crisis or cyber attack, your money simply isn't there. And when it comes to Zelle fraud or wire scams, the FDIC doesn't cover that. Most banks deny liability if you authorize the transaction, even if you were tricked. That $8,400 stolen by a spoofed Chase number? Gone. And get this. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, reported that from 2021 to 2024, Zelle fraud complaints have increased by over 600%, but banks reimbursed victims only 9% of the time. That's terrifying. The system is rigged against victims. And if you ask too many questions or start withdrawing large sums, you get reported to FinCEN via a suspicious activity report, ECR, even if you did nothing wrong. So don't let that little app balance lull you into thinking you're secure. In a moment of crisis, a cyber outage, a systemic freeze, your digits on a screen become just that. Digits. Try to hold them in your hand, and you'll find there's nothing there. This is real. It's not a conspiracy. It's policy. It's banking as usual. And most people have no idea. 9. New AI voice cloning scams are emptying accounts in under 3 minutes. Now look, I know we've all heard about scams, but this one's next level, and it's happening in real time while you're watching this. Criminals are using AI voice cloning to mimic your loved ones, your kid, your mom, your spouse, with such eerie precision that they could convince you in seconds they've been kidnapped. It takes just 3 seconds of a voice sample, scraped from TikTok, Instagram, or even an old voicemail, and boom, they've got the exact tone, the emotion, the pitch. You pick up the phone and it's your daughter crying, "Mom, please help me. They have me. They need money now, or they'll hurt me." But it's not her. It's a bot. And by the time you realize it's fake, you've already sent $5,000 through Zelle or Cash App. Irreversible. The FTC has warned about this. In March 2023, they put out a bulletin saying these attacks are growing at unprecedented rates. But no one's prepared. Not you. Not your bank. According to McAfee's Global Scam Report, over 1 in 4 Americans have already been targeted by AI-driven scams, and most had no clue until their accounts were drained. It's high-tech emotional blackmail. And here's what's worse. Banks are treating these like authorized transfers, so you get nothing back. Nothing, even if it was under duress. And the kicker? These scammers aren't overseas anymore. Organized crime rings in Florida, Texas, and California are deploying these tactics locally. We're talking American IPs, US phone numbers, even real bank-looking URLs. This isn't a Nigerian prince. This is your brother crying through the phone asking for help, and you only have seconds to decide. Don't react emotionally, because if you do, you're done. This is psychological warfare using artificial intelligence, and your entire life savings are now just one bad call away from disappearing forever. Banks are quietly closing accounts with no explanation, and it's legal. Let me paint a picture that's becoming way too common. You wake up one day, go to buy coffee, and your debit card is declined. Weird. So you open your banking app, account not found. You panic. Did I get hacked? Did someone steal my info? No. Your bank closed your account. Just like that? No warning? No appeal? And they don't have to tell you why. They just send a generic letter weeks later citing suspicious activity or business decision. And here's the catch. Even if there's no fraud, banks have full discretion to terminate your account under the terms of service you never read. And lately, they're doing it more than ever. According to the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, U.S. banks closed over 1.2 million consumer accounts in 2024 alone, up 52% from 2022. Some of this is linked to anti-money laundering laws, but in reality, banks are flagging regular people for innocent behavior, selling on Facebook Marketplace, receiving crypto payments, even transferring money between your own accounts. One small misstep, or a flagged keyword, and you're on a list. And here's where it gets dystopian. You can't open a new account elsewhere if you're blacklisted by the check systems or early warning services. These are shadow databases that banks use to share risk reports about you, but you have zero visibility into what's on them unless you request it, and even then, good luck getting removed. The terrifying truth? You could be financially unpersoned overnight. No bank account, no way to pay bills, no access to your direct deposit, and for people living paycheck to paycheck, that's a death sentence. This is financial deplatforming, and it's hitting working Americans hardest. You don't have to break the law. You just have to make one suspicious Zelle transfer, or trigger one automated flag, and boom, gone. 7. Zelle is the new Wild West, and the sheriff has left the building. Let's talk about Zelle, the bank-backed payment platform that was supposed to be the safe alternative to Venmo or Cash App. Spoiler, it's not. In fact, it might be the single most dangerous way to send money right now. Why? Because Zelle isn't protected by the same fraud rules as credit cards or debit cards. Once you hit send, that money's gone. No chargebacks, no dispute process, no safety net. According to a 2023 Senate report, over $440 million was lost to Zelle-related fraud in a single year, and banks reimbursed just a tiny fraction of it. That's not just negligence, that's engineered vulnerability. And criminals know it. They've zeroed in on Zelle like vultures. They spoof your bank's number, call pretending to be fraud prevention, and walk you through transferring your money to secure it. But they're the ones receiving it. Worse? Some banks are now blaming customers for authorizing these transfers, even though they were coerced. That's like blaming a mugging victim for handing over their wallet. And here's the part they don't tell you. Many banks force you to sign up for Zelle when you open an account. You don't even know you're enrolled, but you are, and you're vulnerable. Thousands of Americans, especially seniors, have lost life savings to Zelle scams, entire retirement funds wiped out in 90 seconds. And if you think you're safe because you're tech-savvy, think again. Some scams are so sophisticated, they mimic your exact account interface, down to the pixel. You'd swear you're on your real banking app. And by the time you figure it out, it's too late. This isn't about paranoia. This is about reality. Zelle is a booby trap, dressed up like a helpful app, and most people are walking into it blindfolded. 6. Know your customer. Laws are now used to freeze accounts for speaking out. This one's going to make your blood boil. The same rules that were supposed to keep us safe from terrorists and drug cartels? They're now being weaponized against regular Americans, especially those with opinions that don't align with the status quo. You've probably heard the term KYC, know your customer. It sounds harmless, even responsible. But it's the foundation for something much darker. Under the Bank Secrecy Act and Patriot Act, banks are now required to monitor your behavior, your spending, your transfers, your associations, and file a suspicious activity report, SAR, if something doesn't feel right. But who decides what's suspicious? Increasingly, algorithms do. And if you're flagged, your account can be frozen. No explanation, no appeal, no warning. In 2024 alone, over 23,000 Americans had accounts frozen under SAR-related actions. Not criminals, not fugitives, just people who triggered a red flag, donating to a controversial cause, sharing a sensitive post on social media, or traveling to the wrong country. We're talking about a social credit system, dressed up in banking language. There are reports, real ones, of individuals having their accounts shut down after speaking at political rallies, criticizing certain institutions, or even subscribing to dissident newsletters. The banks don't tell you that's the reason, of course. They just cite business risk. But when you dig, The pattern is clear. Your finances are no longer private. They're surveilled, scored, and judged. And the penalty is financial exile. No bank means no job deposit, no rent payment, no access to digital life. They say it's about security. But let's be honest, it's about control. And it's getting worse. 5. Your bank can legally seize your money to pay its own debts. It's called bail-in. Most Americans don't know this, and I mean almost none. But in the event of a financial crisis, your bank can legally take your deposits to cover their own insolvency. Yeah, read that again. It's called a bail-in. And it's not a conspiracy theory. It's written into U.S. and international banking regulations. After the 2008 financial collapse, global regulators decided that taxpayers shouldn't be on the hook again for billion-dollar bailouts, so instead, they came up with a clever workaround. If a bank is failing, they can now seize the money inside customer accounts to stabilize themselves. Yes, your checking and savings account. Under the Dodd-Frank Act signed into law in 2010, derivatives, not depositors, get first dibs in a collapse. So if your bank is sitting on risky debt, like hundreds of U.S. banks still are, you could end up holding the bag. The FDIC insures up to $250,000 per depositor, right? But here's the truth bomb. The FDIC only has about $121 billion in its insurance fund to cover over $19 trillion in U.S. bank deposits. That's less than 1% coverage. If more than a handful of mid-sized banks collapse simultaneously, the insurance pool is wiped out instantly. And it's already happening. In March 2023, the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank saw billions frozen and small businesses thrown into chaos. You think the government has a magic button to fix that overnight? They scrambled, and what they didn't tell you was that many depositors were only made whole because of a backdoor bailout by the Federal Reserve, not the FDIC. In other words, they bent the rules to keep people calm. But next time, no guarantees. If the system truly breaks, and it's hanging by threads of debt and derivatives, your money becomes a line item on a spreadsheet the bank is allowed to convert into their own capital. They don't call it theft. They call it depositor reclassification. It's real. It's legal. And it's coming. 4. Your digital payments are being watched, flagged, and categorized in real time. You ever buy ammo online? Maybe a subscription to a controversial newsletter? Or donate to an off-mainstream cause? Guess what? That purchase was logged, categorized, and possibly flagged by your payment processor. Because the truth is, everything you buy digitally is part of a massive behavioral database. Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal all track and share metadata about your purchases, and they don't need your consent. They share it with banks, law enforcement, and increasingly, private partners using AI surveillance tools. In 2022, MasterCard announced its expanded Merchant Category Code, MCC, tracking system for firearms and ammunition sales. And sure, the rollout got pushback, but the infrastructure, it's already there. Banks now know if you bought a gun, when, where, and how much you spent. But it goes deeper. In 2024, several banks, including Chase and Bank of America, were caught closing accounts of customers involved in crypto, firearms, or alternative media. No criminal charges, no explanation. They call it risk management. You call it your life. And here's the worst part. Every digital transaction helps build a profile. AI now scans purchase patterns, travel habits, recurring payments, even subscriptions, and scores your financial trustworthiness. It's not just about fraud anymore. It's about behavior prediction. A late-night transfer, a VPN-enabled login, a sudden cash withdrawal. Boom, you're flagged. And the software doesn't ask questions. It freezes, it restricts, it escalates. Even PayPal has toyed with misinformation penalties, floating policies to fine users $2,500 if they share content the company deems false. They walked it back after backlash, but the infrastructure still exists. It's not just your money. It's your digital fingerprint, and banks are treating it like a weapon they can aim at will. You think you're in control, but with every tap you're feeding the system, and it's watching. 3. The CBDC is coming, and it will change everything about your money. You need to understand this next one before it's too late, because it's not sci-fi, it's policy. The central bank digital currency, CBDC, isn't just being tested anymore. It's coming, quietly, relentlessly, and it's going to change everything about how money works. The Federal Reserve's Project Hamilton, developed in partnership with MIT, has already created a working prototype for a U.S. digital dollar that can process 1.7 million transactions per second, all programmable, trackable, and yes, controllable. They're not saying if anymore, they're saying when. And here's what they don't want you to know. A CBDC isn't just a digital version of cash. It's a government-issued token that can be monitored, restricted, or even deleted based on your behavior. You like cash because it's private, right? You can spend it however you want. But CBDCs are the opposite. They're traceable. They're programmable. That means your money could be set to expire, restricted from certain uses, or limited geographically. You want to buy an extra tank of gas this month? Sorry, you exceeded your carbon quota. Trying to donate to a controversial cause? Blocked. Sound crazy? It's already happening in China, where the e-yuan has built-in spending restrictions and facial recognition tie-ins. And now, the Bank of International Settlements says over 130 countries, representing 98% of global GDP, are actively developing CBDCs. In July 2023, the Fed launched FedNow, a 24/7 real-time payment system, the perfect infrastructure to deploy a CBDC instantly. They're conditioning us for it. Faster payments, no need for banks, just download the app. But once it's here, your financial freedom is gone. With the flick of a switch, they can freeze your funds, restrict your purchases, or erase your access altogether. And if you think they won't, just ask the truckers in Canada. Thousands had accounts frozen just for protesting. The CBDC is not money, it's control, and it's already in the pipes. 2, you're already being debanked, and most don't even realize it yet. There's a quiet purge happening right now in the financial world, and most people have no idea it's already affecting them. It's called debanking, and it's exactly what it sounds like. The strategic removal of individuals and businesses from the banking system based on risk, ideology, or even personal associations. And no, this isn't just happening to criminals or extremists. It's happening to independent journalists, crypto traders, small churches, holistic medicine clinics, even homeschool organizations. Why? Because banks are under pressure to reduce reputational risk. That's the new buzzword, reputational. If your activity might draw scrutiny or controversy, even if it's totally legal, you're flagged, you're scored, and eventually you're dropped. In 2023, PayPal, Stripe, and even traditional banks like Chase closed accounts tied to people with problematic views. No trial, no crime, just policy. And good luck getting back in. Once you've been debanked, opening another account is like applying for parole. You'll face endless rejections, endless paperwork, and shadow bans from payment processors that all share data through APIs and risk networks. In fact, the largest banking data clearinghouse in the U.S., Early Warning Services, is owned by Bank of America, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase, Truist, Capital One, and PNC. They decide who's a risk, and you have no appeal. This isn't about fraud prevention anymore. It's ideological filtration, and it's being baked into financial compliance models right now through tools like LexisNexis Risk Solutions, which uses AI to assess your behavior, online presence, affiliations, and transaction history. It's not just bad actors anymore. It's anyone who doesn't fit the model. And if that doesn't scare you, it should. 1. The next cyber attack will be on the banks, and you won't get a warning. This is the big one. The one no one wants to say out loud, but all the experts are whispering behind the curtain. The next major crisis won't be a natural disaster. It won't be a recession. It will be a cyber attack on the banking system. And when it hits, it'll be instantaneous. No warning. No way to prepare. The World Economic Forum, the Bank of England, and the U.S. Treasury have all publicly stated that a cyber pandemic is not just possible, it's likely. In fact, the FS-ISAC, Financial Services Information Sharing and Analysis Center, reported over 2.5 billion cyber intrusion attempts against global financial institutions in 2023 alone. That's up 170% from the year before. These aren't just amateur hackers. These are state-level threats, groups backed by foreign governments with one goal: disrupt Western finance. Think about it. If you can't access your money, your job stops. Your rent doesn't go through. Your card declines at the store. Panic sets in. That's all it takes. Just 24 hours of banking disruption could cripple commerce, logistics, payrolls, and food delivery. And most banks have zero obligation to compensate you during a force majeure that includes war, terrorism, or cyber attack. In 2021, Colonial Pipeline was shut down by ransomware, and people fought over gas. Imagine that with cash. And here's the terrifying part. This kind of shutdown could wipe transaction histories, scramble account data, or trigger mass freezes for your protection. Remember when Wells Fargo glitched in 2019 and people couldn't access their accounts for days? Multiply that by 100. That's what experts are warning about. It won't be a single bank. It'll be the system itself. And when that happens, if you haven't planned ahead, you're locked out. So now you know, it's not just fraud, it's not just glitches, it's a system that's quietly being rewired against you. Banks closing accounts with no notice. AI scams cloning your voice to rob your family. Digital dollars rolling out under the radar. And once your money vanishes, no one's coming to help you. In 2024 alone, over 1.3 million Americans reported losing access to their bank accounts without cause. Billions in deposits are locked, seized, or stolen every single month, and most victims never get a dime back. This isn't a warning. This is a reality check. And it's already happening to people just like you. So do not leave this video and go back to scrolling like nothing's wrong. Back up your cash. Diversify your money. Stop trusting convenience over control. Because if you wait until the moment your screen says $0, you waited too long.